whether or not there really was a daycare center in the building itself, but it would not be surprising to find daycare in a federal facility. We do know of many parents rushing up to try to retrieve children who were in the area. Let us listen now, because I believe the governor of Oklahoma, Frank Keating, is on the line with our local station.
Well, I understand that the White House has called here or is in the process of contacting us to request from us what we need, and that is certainly something that we would immediately ask for.
Governor, what kind of security was in the federal building?
I'm not sure what kind of security was in that building. Obviously, that's more of an office building than a courts building. I don't know. I've been in there frequently, probably within the last year, and the security was minimal.
That's obviously something that will be checked in the next few days. To remind people, the ATF, the DEA, the Military Recruiting Office, and the Secret Service are located inside that building. Governor, is there anything else that you would like to ask for the people of Oklahoma?
No, I just would ask everybody to hold hands and pray for the people who were injured and those who didn't survive. And obviously, we're coordinating the emergency response, the law enforcement response. We will find out who's responsible, and they will not get away with it.
Governor, since the Lieutenant Governor, Mary Fallon, is also on the phone, if you would, Ms. Fallon, could you give us a feeling now for what you and the governor will do from this point, how you see your roles, and what you'll be doing from this moment on to deal with this crisis in the next few minutes and hours?
Mary stepped away just a minute. Let me ask her. They want to know how you see your role for the rest of the crisis. Let me put Mary on right now.
Sure. Thanks, Governor.
Jack, well, we're trying to coordinate the medical help right now for the governor, and we've been talking to some of the hospitals and the University Health Sciences Center, and we've got the phone number set up for doctors calling. We are having some phone calls here at the Capitol of people wanting to volunteer their services, but they don't know where to go. And, of course, there are hospitals that are overloaded, and we're surveying the hospitals right now to find out what their loads are. We know that in the Veterans Center there are children and regular folks that are been admitted to that center, and, of course, in the Health Sciences Center, even where the children are located in the Children's Hospital, they're taking adults. So everyone's pulling together and working together to get everybody covered.
All right.
Lieutenant Governor Fallon, can you give us those phone numbers once again for the repository?
Yes, for physicians, nurses, or any other type of medical support personnel that can volunteer their services, the number is 271-2331. For hospitals and clinics that are overloaded and need extra help with personnel, they can call 271-2316.
Okay, Lieutenant Governor Mary Fallon, thank you for joining us. We'll be checking back with you and also with the governor during the day. Just for our audience in Oklahoma City, I believe right now that national viewers are also watching as we look right now again at the stark devastation there on the north side of the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Office Building here in Oklahoma City, which, as we've mentioned earlier, and again, just, some speculation surrounding what this might mean. But again, among some 20 federal agencies at least that have offices in this building, one of those Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, ATF, which was, of course, the agency initially involved in when the siege began in the cult compound standoff in Waco 2 years ago, and either an ironic coincidence or speculation about otherwise, that 2 years ago today, the violent end of that standoff ended, if memory serves me correctly, around 90 lives lost at that point. Let's go to Terry Watkins, our reporter live downtown right now in the area. Terry?
We're still watching as the Oklahoma City Fire Department and the Oklahoma City Police, now we're seeing Guthrie Police, more police from around the metro area converging in this area. We've been moved 5 blocks back from our original location as the fire department and everyone else began trying to search for another possible bomb inside of that building, Jack. So right now we had communication with the Oklahoma City Police Department and the fire department. When we moved back, we've lost a lot of our contact with them, though we understand they will be coming back to us, hopefully to provide additional information as they get it or as they can get this far back to bring it to us.
Again, as you've heard earlier, in fact, when we talked with Governor Frank Keating a moment ago, impossible to say how many deaths at this point, but lots of deaths, confirmed fatalities in the area of the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Office Building downtown in Oklahoma City. And that's also, we're told, heard a moment ago from one of our people in the newsroom, that a statement is planned shortly from the White House or someone with the Clinton administration.
Just in case you are still joining us, it is 9:30 in Los Angeles in the morning. It is 12:30 Eastern Time, and it is 10:30 in Oklahoma City, or 11:30 in Oklahoma City at the moment. And this is what has happened. At 9 o'clock Oklahoma time this morning, a major explosion at the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building in the center of Oklahoma City. We now confirm it is a 9-story building, and you're looking at the north side of it, and every floor has been affected. There have been fatalities inside and outside the building. Though the governor of Oklahoma, Frank Keating, said just a moment ago it is impossible to put their finger yet on how many people have actually been killed. There have been numerous, to emphasize, casualties, with the Veterans Center taking in children and the Children's Hospital taking in adults, we learned a while ago. This is a building that houses many government agencies, including the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms Bureau, the Drug Enforcement Administration, and the Oklahoma offices of the Secret Service, as well as the Social Security offices and the Veterans Administration offices. Governor Keating said a short while ago that he'd been in and out of the building several times. This was not a building which had a great deal of security in it. The explosion was felt an enormous distance away. We can confirm that it was felt at least 30 miles away by one person who felt it at that distance. The Justice Department now confirms that an unexploded device has been found in the basement of the building, and the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms has dogs in the building sniffing for yet other devices. Many federal buildings around the country have been put on a heightened state of alert. The FBI, as we said, is leading the investigation. The president has been apprised and is concerned about the reports he hears from there. The concern has to do with the speculation that this was a terrorist attack of some nature. And there's been a lot of talk in Oklahoma City this morning about this having been the second anniversary of the attack on the compound in Texas of the Branch Davidians 2 years ago, where David Koresh and numerous of his followers died, as well as several members of the Bureau of Arms, Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms who led the assault.
A lot of people were not.
That's as much as we know at this point. Let's go back and listen to our local affiliate in Oklahoma City, KOCO Channel 5.
The medical teams to enter. Then once the medical teams enter, we expect quite a large number of rather badly injured individuals being brought here.
Do you have the capacity to handle that here?
We have an incredible capacity. I will tell you that of the 56 we treated, each of the 56 injured individuals had a single doctor and at least 1 or 2 nurses with them. So we've had an amazing outpouring of support from the medical community. To have 56 doctors here at one time treating 56 patients is rather unheard of. We also right now have at least 3 or 4 other doctors who are just sitting here waiting for more of the injured to come. We have 3 patients in the operating room at the present time. We have more operating rooms ready to be used if needed. So we don't have a problem with capacity. We do have one problem with probably a few too many volunteers. We've had volunteers coming from far out of town, and I cannot tell you how much I appreciate them being here. Right now, I think we have all the doctors and all the nurses and EMTs that we need.
Can you describe the injuries
from there? They told you anything about the numbers of people that may be coming in or that were trapped out there that are affected in this thing?
The question is about the numbers of injured individuals. The most that we've heard from the police department is that there are quite a number who are dead at the scene. There are another large number who are injured, but we have no absolute numbers. We've had 56. I think some of the other hospitals have probably had comparable numbers. So if you add that up, that's easily a couple of hundred injuries.
Can you describe the injuries?
The initial group of injuries that we saw were people who were on the street and outside, and they were injured by exploding glass. And they had many superficial lacerations of the face, the scalp, the back. There was one lady who had her hand on a doorknob when the explosion took place. The door flew open, and the power of the exploding door fractured the bones in her arm, and she's currently in the operating room. Those are being fixed. So the initial injuries were people who were standers-by or visitors or walkers in the street. And then we started getting some children from the daycare center, and then we got some people from within the building. Those within the building were injured considerably worse than those who were out on the streets.
What kind of injuries do those people have?
There are 3 people in the operating room right now. One has an injury to the carotid artery, which is the larger artery in the neck. The other one has multiple injuries of the face and neck. The third one has injuries to his leg and the artery supplying his leg. So those are rather substantial major injuries.
You would call them critical?
At this point, yes, ma'am.
How are you spreading the injured among the hospitals in Oklahoma City?
Well, I'm not certain of the overall plan. I have asked that some of the more critically injured people be brought here because of the physician supply we have here. We have many neurosurgeons, many orthopedic surgeons. They deal with the most severe injuries. So I've asked that those injuries be brought here. We're well equipped and well supplied with medical staff to take care of them. I do not know how they're being triaged from downtown. I would think that we could handle any of the injuries, but because of our proximity and because of the enormous number of specialists we have, I think that we should probably be receiving some of the more severely injured individuals.
How will families know the degree of injury and if their relative is here?
Okay, we have a central area for all families. It is in the gymnasium of our mental health center. If any of the families go into the gymnasium, on the wall in the gymnasium, we have a huge board with names of everyone who's been injured and the hospital location of that individual. So it doesn't matter if that individual is here or elsewhere. Come here and you can find out where the individual is. And we also have conditions on a large number of these also. So we'd be delighted to be as helpful as we can for anyone who wants to come to our mental health center.
Tell me about the children that were injured that were brought in.
There were 4 children. One was dead. The other 3 children had facial injuries. One of the 3 had some less significant facial injuries, but I think she was psychologically overwhelmed with the impact of what happened. The other thing we have dealing with our families in the gymnasium of the mental health center is that we have 3 psychiatrists at the present time to help the families deal with the acute trauma and the grieving that is going to be necessary for so many of the family members.
How old was the child that died?
I do not know.
What was the extent of that person's injuries?
I do not know.
When you talk about the incredible grief and trauma, how is this community going to handle that? What's going to happen in the days to come?
Well, I think that we are beginning to see the acute effects of that trauma. The more chronic, longer-lasting effects, I think we will not yet see for quite a period of time. I think initially it will be shock and grief, but then we'll have the more significant long-term depressive grief reactions that occur in so many individuals who are afflicted with such a terrible catastrophe. Right now, we have psychiatrists and mental health professionals available to deal with all of the acute problems.
The blood supply is the question.
The blood supply, to the best of my knowledge, is intact. There is no problem with blood supply. If anyone would care to donate blood, the location for donation is the Oklahoma Blood Institute. Right now, we have all the blood we need.
Have you had to bring in any supplies of blood or any other medical supplies?
My understanding is that the Blood Institute has satisfied all of our blood supplies. We have in the hospital, as you're well aware, an enormous stockpile of supplies. But in addition, we have had people bringing supplies from other hospitals. I think there's even a group here from Fort Sill. Each group is bringing its own supplies, and we have lots of supplies. We have rooms, doctors, supplies, nurses. Now what we need is for those bombs to be defused so we could be of more help to those who need us.
You guys need to go.
My understanding is that there are fatalities downtown. We have had no other fatalities brought here.
We need to break this up. They need to go back to the...
You've been listening to Dr. Tom Caniglione, the medical director at St. Anthony Hospital, where it's very close to the explosion site, and so many of the injured have been brought here. Right now, there's sort of a lull as they are treating the initial injuries, which were mostly lacerations, some broken bones. Some people are in surgery, but in moments they expect is that building where all of the most seriously and the fatalities are, they expect those injuries to start coming in here in a moment, and then they will have their hands full. Surgical suites will be used. The doctors are on hand. All is here. All is under control. They don't need any more medical personnel right now. They may in the hours to come, but at this point, things are under control. There are still injured being sporadically brought in. You're seeing a pickup truck here, brought someone in. So the situation at St. Anthony is still very, very critical and about to get worse, but it's under control, if that makes any sense. Live from St. Anthony, I'm Jane Braden reporting.
And Jane, I'd like to reiterate something that Dr. Caniglione mentioned. If you do have relatives that worked in the building and you are wanting to get an update to find out where they are. You've not been able to get to reach them. Obviously, the phones have been down there for some time. Dr. Caniglione says you can go to the gymnasium at the Mental Health Center at St. Anthony's. They will have on a bulletin board there the names, the locations where those patients were taken, and he said in several instances also their condition at that point. So again, the gymnasium at the Mental Health Center at St. Anthony Hospital is the place to go to get information on the injured. Obviously, one thing that touches you very deeply when Dr. Caniglione did confirm that one child had died. We understand that there was a daycare center inside on the lower levels of the Alfred P. Murrah building. I believe they were mostly children of the workers there. We know that one child has in fact died. There is also a daycare center located very close to the Murrah building, just across the street, and it is the YMCA Daycare Center. The parents there are asked to go to the grassy area east of the YMCA to pick up your children. Two other notes to pass along. Penn Square Mall has closed. Penn Square Mall located just north across the street from the 50 Penn Place, which is the building where the FBI was located. It has been evacuated some time ago. We're told Penn Square has closed, as has Remington Park.
Jennifer, this is Jack again at the update desk, and I'll apologize for having the phone in my ear. I'm trying to make another contact I'm on hold for right now. But I just spoke with Jess Sarmiento, who is at the White House, the press person who is in charge of this region of the country. They have a press secretary, and then they have people for, I think it's 6 regions of the country, and for this particular section, Jess is in charge of. Spoke with her just a moment ago, and she said that right now that some of this may have been covered on national, so if I'm repeating it, you'll forgive me, but I've been talking with them, and she says that Chief of Staff Leon Panetta is right now meeting with senior staff at the White House as they stay apprised of the situation. The President staying up to date on it. She tells us that White House Press Secretary Mike McCurry will be holding his briefing that has been referred to somewhat earlier at, unless events intervene to change it, at 12 o'clock Oklahoma time at noon, which would be in about 17 minutes right now. And Jennifer, I'll pitch it back to you while I hold on this call.
Okay, thanks, Jack. I believe we have Barbara Goche on the phone. Barbara, where are you, and tell me what you're seeing.
Jennifer, we've still been moved back from the scene, but I've got a little more information. I'm not quite sure if you've been reporting this, because I've not been hearing everything that we have been reporting, but I've been told by one of the officers here on the scene that there are 55 to 56 children trapped inside. You talked about the daycare that's on the lower floors of that federal building. We understand there were 60 children in the daycare, and 4 to 5 have been taken out, but there are 55 or 56 children trapped inside, along with numerous other people. He said they don't know how many people are trapped in there because they don't know how many people are actually in the building. As you said, this happened at 9 o'clock, and the building was full. Now, we've also been told that the folks are trying to do what they can. And that second bomb that we've been talking about, the possible incendiary device, he tells me that bomb is up near the daycare area. So it is quite frustrating for them because they know that there are people inside and that need help, but they cannot get to them right now until they either defuse or move that second incendiary device.
All right, Barbara, thank you for that update. We're going to go now and listen to Gary Glover, who was an eyewitness. He spoke with us just a few minutes ago. Let's see what he had to say and what he saw and heard after the explosion.
Oh, it was a terrible explosion. It happened about 9 o'clock, I think it was. Boy, it's just like an atomic bomb went off. The ceiling went in and all the windows came in, and it was a deafening roar, and then there's just dust and everything. I don't know what direction it came from, but all I know is everything just caved in all around me.
Gary Glover, who was an eyewitness during the explosion. Our Terry Watkins has been standing by live now all morning long, just outside the federal building. Terry, tell us the latest that you have from down at that location.
Well, Jennifer, we got a little higher vantage up for you this time. You can see down towards the Murrah building a massive staging area. We have seen fire department and police units coming in from surrounding the metro area, Deer Creek, Guthrie, Moore, Cleveland County, all of those. They are staging down in an area down there, and this appears, in the indications we had received a little earlier, is this will be part of the search as they begin to deal with the victims and the damage down in that area. They've got police units on horseback because it's just impossible to get around in that area down there. We have lost direct contact with John Hanson with the fire department and Bill City with the Oklahoma City Police Department after they moved us back over the concerns over another possible bomb. So we're still standing about 5 blocks back from the Murrah building at 10th and Hudson. So we are not getting additional reports on how the search inside of the building is going. We're trying to talk to fire units and people that keep going by us, and they say they're just searching. They're just still inside and looking. And that is part of what you're beginning to see down there in that downtown area.
That update. As we mentioned a few moments ago, Tinker Air Force Base, located in Midwest City, just outside of Oklahoma City, they have been placed on a high security alert. Governor Frank Keating says he has closed state offices for the day, and he has also called in the National Guard. Now, a short time ago, about 30 minutes ago, we shot some videotape. Here's the bomb squad, and where they are now, I believe that's the basement of the state capitol building. The bomb squad going through the hallways into individual offices to check to see if there is anything suspicious, anything at all. As you know, located inside the federal building, you're aware by now, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, they have an office, their Oklahoma City office, located in the Murrah building. The Drug Enforcement Agency is located there, a military recruiting office located there, as is the Secret Service. You're watching videotape shot just about half an hour ago. They are in the basement now. They are checking and then going upstairs to check all the offices to make sure that no suspicious devices are located there. For those of you wanting to donate blood, the Oklahoma Blood Institute now tells us they are taking O-negative blood only, and only if you have donated before. O-negative, of course, the universal blood type. You can go to the Oklahoma Blood Institute. I believe they're located at 10th and Lincoln, yes. Now, the governor's plan, as we said, he has called in the National Guard. He's also called in additional Oklahoma Highway Patrol troopers. And he has also asked University Hospital, located in the Capitol complex, to be the repository for phone calls if you are a doctor, a nurse, a respiratory therapist, an EMT. We'd like you to call, if you can come back here so we can give you those numbers, 271-2331. Again, 271-2331. If you're a physician, an RN, an LPN, an emergency technician, or respiratory therapist, they will need your help. But in order to know where and when to go, which hospital to go to, call that number, 271-2331. Also, hospitals and clinics will need help. We heard that St. Anthony Hospital has right now an overflow of volunteers. However, that will not be the case probably throughout the early morning hours, and then again tomorrow as their needs will maintain and continue. So those of you who would like to help, to volunteer, another number for you to call is 271-2316. That number is 271-2316. You can call that number. They will be able to best tell you which hospital, which clinic, which place you can go to best be of service. Again, we had mentioned the FBI. The FBI is not located in the Alfred P. Murrah building. The FBI is located about 50 blocks north in a building called 50 Penn Place. And they have evacuated that building. It's probably about a 15-story tall building. They have evacuated that about 10 o'clock this morning. They sent in bomb technicians to check to make sure that there were no other devices inside that building. Again, 50 Penn Place, a large shopping mall located just north of 50 Penn Place, that is closed. Remington Park Racetrack is closed. Governor Frank Keating has closed the state offices today, so an incredible amount of immediate reaction to this tragedy. As we have been told, we talked to Dr. Tom Caniglione, the medical director for St. Anthony Hospital. That's the hospital getting the brunt of the injuries. And he tells us, unfortunately, that we have confirmed that one child has died. And we are also told by Barbara Goche, who is in the area, that there is a daycare in the lower levels of that building. Located in the daycare were about 60 children. Now, we're told they have taken out about 4 to 6 children inside that building. They were taken to St. Anthony Hospital. As we mentioned, one of those children has died. There are still, however, about 55 children, we are told, trapped inside the building. We are now aware, we have another eyewitness. We'd like to toss to some videotape that we took a little bit earlier today of another person who was an eyewitness to this horrible explosion that happened about 9 o'clock this morning.
was that like?
It was just, I never experienced anything like it. You feel the concussion, and then next thing you know, you're on the floor covered in glass. Probably lost consciousness for just a few seconds, you know, but it was really amazing.
Okay, now he was describing the scene that he saw about 9 o'clock this morning. As you can see, emergency workers, oh goodness, there's a baby. That child, hard to tell the age, probably about 2 to 3 years old. Oh, this is awful to watch. Taken from the daycare center. There's a woman with lacerations to the face. Dr. Tom Caniglione says the majority of those hurt have lacerations to the scalp, to the face, to the back. He even mentioned one woman who had her hand on a doorknob inside the federal building. When the explosion occurred, her hand was on the doorknob. The door explodes back at her, and it blew open, and it fractured bones in her arm, and she is currently in surgery. Tremendous amount of blood. It is just an incredible sight. We saw so much of it this morning. It was hard to watch. These, as they are excavating people, as they're coming out of these trapped buildings, being trapped inside the building, we're seeing this, and frankly, the children are very, very difficult to watch. Parents of children inside the daycare center were predominantly employees of the Alfred P. Murrah building. There is also another daycare center next door, the YMCA. Children who were inside that daycare center, their parents are asked to come to the grassy spot on the east side of that building to pick their children up. Cherokee Ballard joins me now, and Cherokee, this has been just an unbelievable sight.
Awful morning. I was on my way downtown this morning when it happened, and I got off on the access road at North 6th Street, which is the main downtown exit, and there were so many emergency vehicles and so many people that I just chose to turn around and come home, because I knew that the mass chaos was going to just keep getting bigger and bigger, and as we're seeing, it certainly is.
Now, Terry Watkins has been located. She was initially a couple of blocks away from the explosion. That they moved them back because there was a concern that there was a secondary device that they found on the east side of the building. They moved all the media back. They have since been moved back even further, and now, Terry, I believe you're what, 10th and Harvey, or locate us?
Yeah, we're at about 10th and Harvey, which puts us about 5 blocks north of the Murrah building. We were able to get on the roof of a business to begin to give you a better shot as all the emergency vehicles began to converge south. Where you see those emergency vehicles is exactly where we were earlier this morning when they initially moved us back further because of a possible bomb threat, a possible second or third device that was found inside of the building or near the building. We have heard a lot of reports from people who have left that scene talking about the sheer devastation that is in front of that building, and of course we can see it. I mean, there is nothing left of that building from this side at all, and we are on the north side of the building. The shot you're seeing is facing south. Emergency crews down there are converging from around the metro area. The helicopters remain up in the air trying to monitor what is going on. We're seeing a lot of relief that's being brought in for the crews that are down in that scene and have been down in that scene since 9 o'clock this morning. They're having to do a floor-by-floor literal search of that building to try to find the survivors and the fatalities that are still in there. And we know there are fatalities inside that building. John Hanson told us that. We are not being allowed by the Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation and the Oklahoma City Police Department to go any closer than we are right now. There is always a continued threat, but they do want the nothing but law enforcement officials to be down in that location conducting the search and dealing with whatever injured. Because in this type of a situation, you also have people who are frightened who simply go into an office and are afraid to move for a period of time. So they want to make sure everything's evacuated, they want to make sure everybody's out, and they want to continue the search not only for the victims and for the bodies of those who did not make it out, but to try to figure out why this all happened, what blew up, where it blew up. And that is the way they begin the search for the who and the why behind all of this.
Terry, thank you very much. Reporting from downtown Oklahoma City. And Jack Bowen is going down there, but he joins us now one last time from our update desk before he goes downtown. Jack.
A couple of things, Cherokee. Of course, this story is receiving national coverage. I'm sure national, not only national, but international coverage. I spoke a moment ago with a senior producer with ABC's Primetime Live, which of course airs on Wednesday nights at 9 o'clock here on Channel 5 and the rest of the ABC stations around the country. Mark Lukashevitz, senior producer, says right now their staff is meeting in New York to figure out exactly how much time they'll be spending on this story tonight. They were planning on doing an hour tonight on Carol O'Connor, and he said, obviously, we won't be devoting that much time, if any, to that story. They're meeting, but they do want to assure our viewers that ABC tonight on Primetime Live at 9 o'clock will be covering this story. We'll be staying in touch with them. And also, the other update, the White House spokesman for this region, Jess Sarmiento, told me from the White House just probably 15, 20 minutes ago that Mike McCurry, the White House press secretary, also with senior staffers in the White House right now monitoring the situation, and we will be getting a live statement from the White House coming up. It's planned for 4 minutes from now at noon Oklahoma time. Could vary slightly depending on events and as they just deal with information coming in on this crisis. But when that happens, we will be bringing you live coverage here on Channel 5, and I'll toss back to you, now to you, Cherokee.
Okay, Jack, thank you very much. And if you are just joining us this morning at 9 o'clock this morning, a big explosion at the Alfred P. Murrah building in downtown Oklahoma City. Most of the media crews since that time have been moved very far back from that. And let's go now to Mike Gotro at 11th and Harvey. Mike, what's the vantage point from there?
Cherokee, we've managed to find a building we can get on the roof here back at 11th and Harvey. You are absolutely right. They have moved crews way back after they found a second device, as they say, inside the building. You're now looking at a shot of the north side of the building. As you can see, most of it is not there. When we were closer to the building, there were some people still trapped on the upper floors. Firefighters having trouble getting trucks close enough to the building with ladders big enough to get that high. I suspect in the corner that these people were trapped in, the only way they're going to get down is through a window. Now, while we were at that scene, they found that second device. We've got some videotape we can roll for you and show you what it was like just as soon as someone yelled that they had found another device in the building. It kind of got mayhem down there on the street. People running, people yelling. The police were even hiding. They weren't sure at that point whether perhaps there was some gunfire or if there was another device. It turns out that reports now say that there was another device. People moved back at that point. That was about 45 minutes ago to at least 4 blocks away from the building. And I understand they are considering moving that perimeter back. Again, just mayhem down here right now. Lots of police from agencies across central Oklahoma. We've even seen some probation and parole agents kind of doubling as police to try to secure the perimeter around this area. I think the biggest fear right now is that if another device went off, we could have many more injuries. Cherokee?
All right, thank you very much, Mike. And we have just, we're receiving numerous phone calls into our newsroom from people wanting to offer their help and wanting to know where they can go. We've been telling you about where you need to go to donate blood. But we also just got a call in about registered nurses that they can call in to help. We have a 1-800 number for you if you'd like to write this down. It's 1-800-580-3476. There it is on your screen, 1-800-580-3476. Working with people at the command post, the Oklahoma Nurses Association are asking anyone that is a registered nurse to please do whatever they can to help in this horrible, tragic situation this morning. No doubt lots of people will definitely need the help. A lot of people already at area hospitals with major injuries, some with minor, which is good to report out of this, but many of them with some injuries that definitely need a lot of medical attention. And if you're just joining us at 9 o'clock this morning at the Alfred P. Murrah building in downtown Oklahoma City, a federal building, a big explosion, lots of people injured. The major concern at this point is that there was a daycare center in the bottom of the building where a lot of children are kept. And you're looking right now at the building. One portion of the whole building was just demolished, blown up. We do have some eyewitness accounts, and let's go ahead and take a listen at one of those.
The ceiling fell in on my head, and it took me a second. It's like I was almost unconscious for a second to figure out what had happened, and the whole building just felt like it was caving in. I didn't know what was going on. And when everything kind of calmed, after all the building had fallen, we made it to the window on the south side and looked across the street, and the federal building was just blown all to shreds. The cars were blowing up. We were hollering at people down below, trying to get people to hear us, you know, and help did arrive. And I was one of the lucky ones. We had one girl seriously hurt. Her face was all cut up because she had a window office. Luckily, I did not, and I was on the other side of the office suite.
And you're looking now at people right after this happened. A lot of people, and a lot of this is unedited video because a lot of these people came out of this building, and buildings near it, covered in blood. Many of them hurt by the shattered glass and glass flying, and a lot of the particularly the building where it happened. A lot of people at this point, they're still in there trying to find the victims. We hope that many of them will make it through this horrible situation. And we want to let you know that in the building, there was many offices, housing and urban development, 177 people worked there, Social Security, General Accounting Office, a major federal building, and many different offices are always in those federal buildings. The U.S. Department of Agriculture, Customs Department, Secret Service, Veterans Administration, Drug Enforcement Administration, Small Business Administration, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. Many of those offices only had 15, 20, 30 people in them, but they were all in that building at that point. And we understand...
This is Peter Jennings at ABC News headquarters in New York. We're going to interrupt very briefly our Channel 5 coverage from Oklahoma City, which has been excellent, just to bring people up to date in case they have joined us from around the country. 3 hours ago in Oklahoma City at 9 o'clock this morning, there was a tremendous explosion, a massive explosion at the federal building in the center of the city, the A.P. Murrah building. You can see there what you may have seen many times already this morning. More than 500 people work in the building. Governor Keating, the governor of Oklahoma, said a short while ago that he knows of at least 18 people dead and 6 maybe children. In the immediate aftermath of the explosion, there has been a frantic search by people in the downtown area for their relatives, their loved ones, their colleagues, and their children. And we do know that both at a daycare across the street in the YMCA and in the building itself, a number of children have been wounded and several have been killed. Perhaps the most current briefing we have had was from a doctor at St. Anthony's Hospital a short while ago, Dr. Tom Caniglione.
The initial group of injuries that we saw were people who were on the street and outside, and they were injured by exploding glass. And they had many superficial lacerations of the face, the scalp, the back. There was one lady who had her hand on a doorknob when the explosion took place. The door flew open, and the power of the exploding door fractured the bones in her arm, and she's currently in the operating room. Those are being fixed. So the initial injuries were people who were standers-by or visitors or walkers in the street. And then we started getting some children from the daycare center, and then we got some people from within the building. Those within the building were injured considerably worse than those who were out on the streets.
Dr. Canigli goes on to say that there has been a tremendous reservoir of goodwill among volunteers in the city, and that they have more than enough of everything to take care of those wounded. Many of the city's hospitals have taken in people. In one case, the Children's Hospital has been so busy taking in adults, and the Adults Hospital in one case has been taking in children. Many people are in shock, and they've had to assign in at least one hospital a team of psychiatrists to deal with people who are, as you can well imagine, in serious trauma after having had some association with this explosion. The assistant fire chief in Oklahoma City, John Hanson, told us a while ago that they believe this was a bombing and they are responding as if it was, but they do not yet have forensic evidence to prove that it was. To continue his quote, one more line, the damage appears consistent with a bombing. And the federal government has become very much involved. The FBI, from command headquarters in Washington, as well as in Oklahoma City and in Phoenix, has leapt into the investigation and will lead the investigation. The Federal Emergency Management Administration has sent teams there, though there do at the moment seem to be an enormous number of volunteers and more than everything that Oklahoma City appears to need except blood. There's been several appeals on our local station, Channel 5, for people to contribute blood at various clinics around the country. There has been a device discovered by dogs and by the FBI in the building. They don't call it a second device, but they do say there has been what they describe as an explosive device found inside the building. There were dogs and rescue workers inside the building trying to ascertain, A, what it is. The Pentagon has become involved, sending very quickly a team of bomb experts to the site. Forensic experts have been sent by the federal government as well, because this is clearly being treated as if it were an attack by a terrorist. 55 or 60 children are still trapped inside the building itself. So there were several daycare centers in the area. ABC's Hal Bruno, our political editor actually, who is a specialist on emergency rescue, tells of several rescue teams being sent from around the country. We know of at least one from Phoenix, Arizona, which is about to take off to go and do what it can. There has been no way whatsoever to ascertain just how many people have been killed or injured. Governor Keating saying he knows of 18 dead, 6 of whom may be children. A great many of the casualties, our local station and the hospital there confirms, have been fairly superficial, people who were affected by the flying glass. But this is a 9-story federal building, which was built in the 1970s, which in at least 2 stories have collapsed upon themselves. So there are many people trapped inside the building. There have been volunteers and appeals for heavy equipment, and the assistant fire chief said this was a relief effort they expected to go on well into the night, if not longer. The President's White House spokesman, Mike McCurry, is going to brief on the President's concern at the very least about this. The President says he was concerned, very disturbed by the reports he has heard about terrorist activity or potential terrorist activity coming from Oklahoma City. We're joined from the Justice Department now by our law correspondent, Tim O'Brien. Justice Tim, I know, has been told to reach everywhere into the federal bureaucracy and see if they can put their finger on anything, right?
That's correct, Peter. There's a great deal of heightened security here. They're checking everyone twice going in. And we understand they're even running mirrors under some of the cars that are entering the building, entering the parking lot inside the building. I haven't seen that, but that's what we're hearing. The Justice Department has dispatched 3 emergency response teams to the scene in Oklahoma City from field offices around the country, and also a team of forensic experts, the same team we understand, or the same group of people that went to investigate the World Trade Center bombing in New York.
Okay, Tim, thanks very much. Has there been any clue picked up anywhere? Has anybody claimed responsibility? Have there been some claims of responsibility in parts of the country? In one, somebody quoted the Nation of Islam, but again, we caution people to remember this kind of thing happens on these occasions. Jim, any claims at all?
Peter, the Justice Department and the FBI are both mum on that. They are opening up a command headquarters at FBI headquarters across the street. We may be getting more information later this afternoon, but we're also told that most of the information is coming right now out of Oklahoma City.
Okay, thank you very much. Tim O'Brien of the Justice Department. We'll go back to him as we learn details. Elsewhere in Oklahoma City today, the headquarters of the FBI were evacuated. The FBI is located in a building called Penn Place, which is not near the federal building, but because the FBI was involved in an investigation and an assault on the Branch Davidian compound in Waco, Texas 2 years ago today, the FBI in Oklahoma City felt it sensible to evacuate their building and several radio stations inside it. There's been a lot of talk in Oklahoma City today as you look at this. Quite horrendous damage done to the north side of the federal building. Quite a lot of talk in Oklahoma City today about some connection to various earlier incidents. It is true that in Oklahoma City, in this building, is located the regional office of the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, which was involved in the assault on the compound at Waco. But as you have heard, not just from us, but from other reporters and observers today, there are lots of people in the world with lots of gripes, at the very least. And so there is no way to put our finger at the moment. This is an earlier piece of videotape from our local station in Oklahoma City when the news was announced that there was an unexploded device found in the basement of the federal building. Now, this is a building that has more than 500 employees. The bomb went off at about 9 o'clock in the morning, so many clearly were at work already, working for the Social Security Administration, the General Accounting Office, the Small Business Administration, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, the Air Force, the Department of Agriculture, Customs, and the Secret Service, and the Veterans Administration. So any serious discussion about who might have done this at the moment is clearly not valid in the absence of some forensic advice for which the military has already dispatched teams. In just a couple of minutes, Mike McCurry is going to brief from the White House. In the intervening time, let us go back to our excellent coverage from Channel 5 in Oklahoma City.
There are literally hundreds of people being taken into ambulances, those who are critically injured. The others, like this lady, they were helped on the site. There were medical personnel from home health care, from different hospitals. There's another man being rushed in.
No wonder we see bad things every day, but this is something that you certainly don't ever hope to have to report on.
That is true. I mean, as we as we walked up, I could not believe what was happening. You really couldn't believe your eyes, and you especially couldn't believe that it was actually happening here in Oklahoma City.
And at this point, the governor has called in for the National Guard to come in and help in this situation, and a lot of emergency crews in downtown Oklahoma City. We know this is making national news across the United States. People are wondering and calling.
Very much a national story and an international story now, this explosion in the heartland of the country in a federal building, just as people were arriving at work this morning, and Washington very much engaged in this. Now, a moment ago, you saw some videotape of people fleeing from the area of the federal building when they heard from local officials that there was an explosive device found in the building. We actually heard that from the Justice Department in Washington this morning, but they may have had a change of mind. Let's go to Tim O'Brien. Tim.
Well, you're exactly right, Peter. They told us earlier that it was their understanding there was an unexploded device. That means a bomb in the basement of the building, and that the Department of Defense had been dispatched to disable the bomb, disarm the bomb. Now we're being told by the same people, not so fast, it may be something else. So we just don't know.
Okay, Tim, thanks very much. And just to add to the confusion, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms has also said that there was an explosive device, what they keep referring to as a second bomb in the building. We've heard some reporting from Oklahoma City this morning about a gas leak and the possibility of a gas explosion. But in general terms, this is being treated as if it were a bomb. There have been fires adjacent to the federal building there. This is an explosion that was felt at an enormous distance away, at least 30 miles away in one case. Damage was scattered all throughout the downtown area. We know that at least more than 100 people have been injured, and the debris scattered over a wide area. Office workers at the local newspaper 2 blocks away were blown from their chairs by the explosion. Back to Channel 5.
They told our helicopter they could only get within 5 miles of that building for safety purposes as well. And Rhonda was with Phil Monahan, 5 News photojournalist, when all of this happened. Phil, you still look like you're a little shaken.
It's something like I have never seen in my life. What kept going through my mind looking at it was, I lived in Los Angeles in 1971 during a major earthquake, and this is far, far worse than anything I saw at that point.
It's hard, too, for us to look at it, but you have a job to do out there, too, and in certain situations like this, it can be really, this is some new stuff that we're looking at here of the building. It can be really difficult to get the pictures and to do your job and to stay calm and all of that combined.
It's amazing that everywhere you turn, there were people like this, just devastated, physically hurt.
Laying all over the street.
Yes, it honestly looked like a war zone. It still does. And there's very little that any of us could do to help, so you can do your job.
This is one of the first pictures Phil took. We just passed it. The black cloud of smoke. That's all we could see in the distance.
Probably just jumped out right then just to see what. Did you all know at that point? You had heard, I'm sure, over the scanners what had happened?
But we weren't even for certain when we got there what building until Phil ran up and actually saw that it was the new federal building.
We heard scanner traffic saying that the new federal building was involved, and when I got up around the corner and saw the very first pictures you saw on this tape.
And most of these people that we talked to that are injured in this video, they were not in the federal building, but in nearby buildings, such as the Water Resource Board building. They were also in the Journal Record building, which was just to the north of the building that the explosion happened in. So you can see how they are injured, so we can only imagine what those people...
What you're looking at here is a block away to the north. There's a large building in between, large building in between where the explosion took place and where this is, and you can see all the windows blown out of the building behind it. It's incredible.
They were also warning people, you know, even though the explosion had already happened, they were warning people to be sure and walk in the middle of the streets, and if we're warning people to stay away from the downtown area. But if you're in that area, be sure and walk in the middle of the streets because there's still falling and flying glass everywhere.
Glass, brick, a lot of the buildings are heavily damaged.
All right, Phil Monahan, Rhonda Chapman, thank you very much. And now let's go to Jennifer Eve, who is on the update desk again. Jennifer.
All right, thanks. You talked about the emotional fallout from this, and it's a good point, a good place to remind people about what Dr. Tom Caniglione told us. He is the medical director down at St. Anthony Hospital. And he said that not only have they called in a lot of emergency personnel, I believe he said they have around 300 now, and he even said they had too many volunteers otherwise. So they'll need volunteers, but perhaps either throughout the evening or tomorrow morning. But he also said that they have called in 3 psychiatrists, and they are there specifically to deal with the emotions.
As Jennifer Eve continues to Channel 5 in Oklahoma City to talk a little bit about the response there has been to assist people who have been injured either physically or emotionally in this explosion, we have on the telephone from Oklahoma City Ed Kirkpatrick, who is the structural engineer for the building. Mr. Kirkpatrick, am I right? This building was constructed somewhere in the 1970s?
Yes, about 1974.
And have you had a chance to look at it, or have you been able to at least analyze the damage from the pictures you've seen?
Well, I can see, I have not seen any of the video yet, but I can see it from my office window about 2 miles north of the building. And it's the entire north face of the building is gone. I cannot see the lower part of the building, so I don't know if that part is gone also, but there were some exposed columns at the bottom of the building at the north face that may have collapsed.
Mr. Kirkpatrick, we've told our viewers several times that the fire department in Oklahoma City is treating this as if it were an explosion, as if it were a bomb. I know this may be stretching you, but as you look at it, do you have any indication, knowing the building, whether this might have occurred inside the building, or for that matter, it may have occurred outside and been a car bomb?
I think it could have occurred outside the building, particularly since the north columns were exposed on the outside of the building.
Could you explain a little more by what you mean?
All the load from the building on the north face comes down to the 3rd floor to a transfer beam, and I'm sorry.
Go ahead. No, I'm listening to you.
And then the transfer beam goes to only about 7 columns on the north face, and they're all columns that you can readily see from the outside.
So by the fact that those columns are standing in the center of the building, you believe that this was not necessarily an internal explosion, but may have come from outside?
I think that may be correct.
Are there any special precautions taken in construction to withstand this kind of structural damage, earthquake, or explosion?
Not for most ordinary buildings. You would in a munitions building, but not for normal construction.
Okay. Mr. Kirkpatrick, we appreciate it. If you get over there and have a closer look, we'd appreciate hearing back from you.
Yes, well, I will if I can get that close.
Thank you very much. Ed Kirkpatrick, who is the structural engineer for the A.P. Murrah building, which, as he said, was built in the 1970s. It's 9 stories tall, and there were 50 people at work there are 50 people who normally work in the building. How many actually showed up this morning, we do not know. And there are already some reports moving around in Oklahoma City among the members of the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms that this was not necessarily a bomb inside a building, but may have come from outside. Anybody who's had experience with car bombs know that they can do as much damage from outside as a bomb internally can do. And if you think of the extent of damage in the downtown area this morning, it is quite possible that what we're looking at here is a car bomb as well. Wouldn't normally speculate in this, except that everybody who's investigating this and everybody who's on the scene says they are treating this as if it were a bomb explosion inside or outside. And there's even been some speculation about the weight of the bomb. It must have been several hundred, if not more than 1,000 pounds of explosives if it did the kind of damage which we can see regularly on the tape. Is Tim O'Brien still standing by at the Justice Department? Okay, we'll come back to Tim O'Brien in just a second, but let's go back to Channel 5 while we wait for Mike McCurry to come at the State Department. Let's go back to Channel 5 briefly.
From the State Restaurant Association, we are aware of the fact that they were having a convention down at the Myriad Convention Center, which is located approximately 4 blocks south of the Murrah building. They say they have equipment, food, a lot of trained personnel down there, and they have canceled the convention so that all of their people who are gathered there in one spot and in a very large area, which will be of some help.
This is, like we said earlier, a disaster of international proportion. The other immediate concern, we only had a moment to mention this a little while ago, but the other immediate concern that has surfaced at the Murrah building right now, the federal building where this occurred, is that there is a water main break now in the basement. A water main break combined with a shaken building with all of the exposed wires causes even more problems, just as broken gas lines can cause. We would assume that by now the utilities people have been able to shut off gas to the building. However, this water main break will cause even new problems. People are still trapped, we understand, in the basement, and as Kevin mentioned a few moments ago, there is a parking area beneath the building, which all of this just keeps creating further and further problems for the firefighters who are on the scene.
Earlier, we were telling you about the little girl at Southwest Medical Center who was there, and we didn't know who she was, and the medical workers don't know who she is. 2.5-year-old girl, fair skin, red hair, blue eyes, in stable condition, but she was being taken to surgery. We believe the mother has been located at another hospital. So we're trying to hook that up and make sure that everybody is connected here, but apparently the mother is injured as well. We have some numbers here we need to tell you about. I don't know if we can get them up, but we need to tell you about them because a lot of people wondering who to call. If you have loved ones you want to check on, there's a number you need to call. It is 820-6801. 820-6801. That is the number to call. Another one, 820-6806. But again, Highway Patrol is cautioning everybody, if you're going to be going out and you have a mobile phone in your car, please don't use it unless it's an emergency, Devin, because the phone lines are so jammed.
It's easy to think that just one little phone call won't matter.
And hello again, this is Natalie Allen, CNN Center in Atlanta. We'll continue to hear from our local affiliates in Oklahoma in their live coverage of this disaster at the Federal Building. Right now, we want to talk with someone here with us in Atlanta. Dr. Gail Anderson is acting medical director of Grady Memorial Hospital in downtown Atlanta. Welcome.
Burned down after the assault by the FBI. Some people have been speculating because the ATF is housed in the Murrah building here, and they were the ones who were involved in the initial raid, February 28th, 1993, that there might be some connection. But perhaps the method of delivery of the explosive device suggests other groups as opposed to Branch Davidians.
Well, no way to tell. Certainly the Branch Davidians were, even though stockpiling weapons and explosives at the time of the ATF raid over 2 years ago, they had never been known to carry out anything, any violent act of this magnitude or any violent act at all that I'm aware of. The anniversary of the fire at the Branch Davidian compound could be a coincidence, naturally. It's interesting to note that the agency that presided over the scene when the fire occurred was the FBI, and the FBI is not housed in this building.
Mm-hmm.
The FBI is housed several miles away in another building. So the FBI was not targeted. I have been by the office building that houses the FBI, and that building appears to have been evacuated. Automobiles are now blocking the entrances to the parking garage there. So obviously authorities are taking precautions to make sure that there's not some attack on the FBI office.
Right. They are obviously considering that the possibility that there might be a present threat against some of these other agencies.
Well, that's exactly right, especially after finding more than one bomb. But again, with regard to who might have done this, it is all speculation at this point. There is the anniversary of the Branch Davidian fire to take into consideration. But on the other hand, there are Muslim fundamentalists on trial in the New York City area. That's another possibility. There are any number of possibilities and no indication that any particular group is responsible at this point.
And there have been a number of arrests both in Pakistan and in the Philippines of Muslim extremists who are suspected of terrorist threats against the United States. Most recently, a threat against 2 United Airlines jetliners that were to be landing in Southeast Asia. Scott, any possibility that these events could be connected? Is anybody talking anything dealing with that?
Well, certainly those are hot leads for investigators to look at, but there's just no indication at this early time as to who may be responsible. The building housed offices of the Internal Revenue Service. It's tax time. That's a theory that's out there right now. Also house the offices of the Social Security Administration. In a building that holds as many federal offices as this one did, there could be any number of possible motives that one could imagine at this early time.
All right, Scott Pelley, CBS News correspondent. We'll cut you loose for a little while, let you gather some more information. We'll get back to you in a little while. Right now, we just want to go to a picture that we've shown you a couple of times and frame it in context for you.
as the rescue efforts have been continuing at the Murrah building. Here on the sky ladder that the fire department is using, you see a gentleman. This is Dr. Brian Espy. He's a veterinarian with the Department of Agriculture. He was with a number of his employees on the 7th floor of the building when the explosion happened. And he was interviewed by our local affiliate, KWTV, immediately after he came down off of the ladder. Let's hear what he had to say.
I just happened to be in that room. It's not the room I normally am in. Was working on a project. It happened, and I was lucky I had a table to dive under.
What went through your mind? Where's the table to get under?
Yeah, what's happening? You know, it's like it happened in slow motion.
What are some of the images that you, while you waited to be rescued, went through your mind?
Well, the same ones that are going, you know, my entire staff of about 7 people is gone.
Just he and I and one lady are the only ones to walk out of our floor area.
Did you see any fatalities?
No,
just a big hole.
No floor.
The ceiling to the basement.
There's nothing there.
Does it make any sense to you?
No.
It's like a dream still. It's not real.
If somebody did this, what could be their motive? To hurt that many innocent people.
Brian Espy, who's a veterinarian with the Department of Agriculture, asking who could be responsible for the deaths of all of those innocent people. Taking a look in his office, not seeing the rest of his staff of 7. They had disappeared as the building collapsed. And Scott Pelley was telling us just a moment ago that federal authorities are taking seriously potential threats against other federal facilities in Oklahoma City, one of them being the FBI building, which is quite close to the Murrah building. They have blocked off access to the parking lots with vehicles. And across the country, it appears as though the threat of further terrorist attacks on federal facilities is being taken seriously. The federal building in downtown Fort Worth has been evacuated solely as a precaution, no specific threat against that building. As well, the John F. Kennedy building in downtown Boston did receive a specific threat. It was evacuated, investigated, as was City Hall in downtown Boston. Both of those threats proved to be unfounded, even though they were specifically telephoned in. Could be the work of a copycat or somebody who's just trying to gain attention, see how they can shake things up. And as well, the federal building in downtown Wilmington, Delaware, was evacuated as well, solely as a precaution. Other than the threats in Boston, we have not heard about any specific threats against any other federal buildings anywhere in the United States. And you do have to remember as well that when this bomb went off shortly after 9 o'clock Oklahoma City time, shortly after 10 o'clock our time here on the East Coast, no threats had been received by any agencies. The most recent threat was phoned in to the FBI about a week ago, specific threats against the FBI. The FBI, though, as Scott Pelley and Jim Stewart have pointed out, is not housed in that building. Therefore, anybody who might have been targeting the FBI missed, or the threat was not specifically aimed at the FBI, and that the threat that was telephoned into the FBI was unconnected. Governor Frank Keating, governor of Oklahoma, is with us on the telephone now. Governor Keating, 3 hours and 31 minutes into this tragedy, is there anywhere to look at this point for a source for this explosion?
Well, that's hard to say. Obviously, my first priority right now is to identify the injured and to care for them and to find out how many fatalities occurred. And obviously, the next step is to provide for public security for the area that was affected, and also to find out who did it. And all of those things are moving in tandem. We have, to date, I think 6 children confirmed dead in the care center and 2 adults. But there were literally hundreds of people in that building. As you know, they bombed.
At the IRS office in Boston, we don't know at this point if these government buildings have been targeted.
One of the leading terrorist experts in this country is with us now, Dr. Livingston, who was in Oklahoma City not too long ago. Dr. Neil Livingston is in our Washington offices at this time. Dr. Livingston, the groups that claim responsibility for these kinds of evil acts, how long does it take them to leave word with someone that, in fact, they were making a statement here?
Well, it depends, and sometimes they'll use a one-time name that we've never heard of before, as in the case of the World Trade Center bombers. There were maybe as many as several hundred claims of responsibility after the World Trade Center bombing, and it turned out that they had sent a letter to the New York Times, and no one immediately identified that as the real claim of responsibility. So we've got to look at all the claims of responsibility and see which ones track and which ones seem that they have the edge of authenticity to them.
Does this have any particular earmarks of any group operating in the United States? It doesn't, I must say, racking my own memory. I don't remember anything quite like this since the World Trade Center.
Well, the only comparable attack in the United States is the World Trade Center. And given the magnitude of the damage, given the way that the bomb went off, it's looking more and more like a vehicle bomb of some sort. Usually the tax resistor groups and the cults and some of the other groups that we've worried about in the past that have had a high index of violence, they've carried out individual or smaller attacks, or they've had shootouts and things like that. Nothing quite of this magnitude. So we have to suggest that, or we have to look very carefully right now at maybe some type of a group that is inspired by events abroad.
All right. Thanks very much, Dr. Neil Livingston, who is a terrorist expert, and we're going to the White House now to President's Press Secretary Mike McCurry.
Let me start with just a note of caution. After a horrible incident such as the one that's occurred in Oklahoma City today, and there's usually a lot of information, and usually most of it turns out to be bad, and before it turns out to be good, and telling you what's going on today and direct you to the appropriate people at the federal agencies that are responding, and tell you a little bit about what the President's initial concerns are after hearing about this incident shortly after 10:30 this morning. Obviously, the President's first and foremost concern is that every thing be done to assist those who have been victims of this incident, to make sure that we've got the right and necessary type of assistance available to local authorities in Oklahoma City, and he is satisfied that those steps are being taken. Secondly, he wants to make sure through proper law enforcement that everything is done as quickly as possible to bring whoever is responsible for this incident quickly to justice. Now, he directed this morning Leon Panetta to convene an interagency working group here at the White House that would just review how federal agencies are now responding. And we're satisfied, based on the report that we have from the Department of Justice, from GSA, from the FBI, from FEMA, from the Secret Service, from the Marshal Service, from all the relevant federal agencies that might have a role here in dealing with this incident, that we have a very good federal response in hand. The federal government has activated an emergency response plan that we train for and that we have in place so that we can coordinate interagency response to incidents like this. The Department of Justice had already responded, had FBI personnel in place, a variety of law enforcement efforts underway. They've established a mobile command center in Oklahoma City with FBI, FEMA, alcohol, tobacco, and firearms, the Marshal Service, and GSA in place to give updated information to folks here in Washington. The President has directed for the emergency response efforts that James Lee Witt, the Director of the Federal Emergency Management Agency, go to Oklahoma City to coordinate the emergency response. So we'll have DOJ coordinating the various law enforcement efforts that will be underway, and FEMA responding to the emergency situation in place. Mr. Panetta has been briefing the President regularly. The President, I expect, like many Americans, has been watching the developments as he sees them on television and getting updates from the Chief of Staff as we go along. I'd ask that you, for inquiries about the various things going on in Oklahoma City related to law enforcement, you stay in close contact with Carl Stern over at Justice, and for the work that FEMA will be coordinating, that Maury Goodman will be a good point of contact. They'll be coordinating some of the interagency public affairs efforts as we go along.
What do you know about it so far in terms of the casualties and possibility that it might have been a bomb?
Well, we know very little hard information. We've heard a lot of different reports. We're getting good information from the field, but they're at the very early stages of investigating this incident, and it is way too early at this point to draw any conclusions about what has happened in Oklahoma City. Clearly there's been a devastating explosion that's occurred at this federal building, that the cause of it is unknown. Those responsible are unknown at this point, and we'll have to develop that very carefully in the course of the coming hours and days.
Casualty number?
We don't have a reliable one. That's being worked on. Again, stay in contact with the local authorities on the ground there who will have the best information as they get it available. Yeah.
Has security been heightened in federal buildings and here in the White House?
Well, we would take at any moment like this. You're seeing now a variety of sporadic reports from federal buildings around the country that are getting alleged threats. And, you know, as federal agencies do, we will respond appropriately. We have directed that federal buildings take any necessary precautions just to respond as they would in a routine way anytime we sense that there is some reason to believe that there's an incident that's occurred that raises the level of threat.
Any report of a threat in Oklahoma City that may have preceded this?
They are looking now through everything available in the information that was available to the federal government to see. We don't have a concrete answer. We're not aware of any at this point.
Are you aware of any kind of conspiracy or plot that would raise this?
We're at the very early stages of investigating this incident, and it would be way too early to develop any good information on anything like that. Yeah, Jill.
Mike, in terms of the response here at the White House, when these interagency groups start up, is there a process where they automatically do things, or has the President jumped in himself and said something must be done?
There's a good federal emergency management plan in effect, which includes, you know, a White House component that the Chief of Staff is now executing at the direction of the President. Obviously, in this situation, the President wants to make sure that the White House stays right on top of an administration response to make sure that the appropriate things are being done. But we're satisfied in large part because of our experience in dealing with incidents of this nature or related types of incidents. So we've got good planning in effect, and that's all underway at this point.
It went automatically into effect, you're saying?
There are a lot of things. The federal agencies like the FBI, like Justice, like GSA, did have planning in effect that kicked in automatically, and here at the White House we established a small interagency working group to make sure we monitored all the proper developments from these various agencies.
Will this affect the security plan for the White House, the future plan?
It's entirely too early to say. That was a review that was still at the Treasury Department, and we'd be jumping to conclusions if we suggested there was anything about today's incident in Oklahoma City that had any bearing on that security review.
Would you like to make a statement before the end of the day on this?
I suspect the President will. I think later in the day, I think he wants to make sure that people have got the best information available to him, and I suspect later in the day he'll be here, yeah.
Security here at the White House, have you done?
We've taken precautions that we would normally take following an incident like this, yes.
Mike, you talked about persons unknown responsible for this. Can you confirm that this actually was a bomb, and can you say what kind of bomb it was?
I would hesitate to do that because there are people on the ground that are looking very carefully at exactly that type of question. I can tell you that law enforcement officials are investigating it as a crime scene, and they are, you know, for that reason, all the relevant law enforcement agencies are in place and responding. Yeah, Ann.
Plan you're referring to, was this developed after the World Trade Center or in recent
Well,
months?
there's a variety of that type of planning that has been in place over time. I'm not sure when it came into effect here. Having participated in another federal agency, I know that they routinely update a lot of their planning activities, and I think they do build on past experience.
What is this to procedures normally taken after an incident such as this? I don't recall X-raying of lunches and bags and stuff after the World Trade Center or after any other incident in recent. Maybe I just didn't notice, but isn't this some new level that we haven't seen before?
I think we are taking precautions as you would expect us to take following an incident of this nature and following threats that have been going to some isolated federal facilities around the country. I'm not aware of any threat here directed against the White House. I'm not, I don't know entirely about all of the federal installations around Washington. I only know about here at the White House. Yeah.
Is there a likelihood that the President will want to visit the site at some point?
Oh, he wants to make sure that the proper law enforcement is in place and that the right emergency response is taking place. It's way too early to make judgments about that.
Confirm that they found an unexploded bomb or an unexploded device?
I cannot.
How many threats have been received around the country? Can you give us any idea? But
we frankly hear about them from news organizations probably even faster than we hear about them through the channels that we've got available to accumulate accurate information. There have been several on the wires already, as you probably know. Yeah, Jack.
Will Justice or ATF, the FBI, give a readout or a detailed briefing on this by the end of the day?
Yeah, they're putting in place their own planning to respond to public inquiries about what's happened, make sure they've got people in place both in Oklahoma City and here in Washington who can respond to specific concerns, and they will do that. I've talked, as I mentioned before, both to Maury Goodman and to Carl Stern.
As those who may have...
No, I'm not aware that they've developed any leads that would suggest a target for an investigation at this point.
Did the President change his plans in any way today?
I don't believe so. He proceeded with the meeting with Prime Minister Chilair, and he's got some additional meetings taking place later today, and he will, as the day goes on, be updated on a regular basis by either the Chief of Staff or anyone else appropriate working with this interagency group.
Mike, is it planned that it would be, one central briefing that would bring in, let's say, Justice and FEMA and everybody else?
Not at the moment. I think that they're all concentrating at their own workplaces, using their own command centers and their own channels back to Oklahoma City. So I think it's more appropriate for them to kind of stay on top of what they've got going on at their individual agencies. We'll check and see later on today if the President will have something to say, who else we might have with him. We'll let you know as the afternoon goes on.
Yeah, this contingency plan that was put into effect, is it an anti-terrorism plan? Does it have a name?
It's just referred to as the emergency response plan. It is not directed at any specific threat because at this point we don't have any credible information that lets us understand precisely what type of incident this was in Oklahoma City.
What types of emergencies has it been designed for? Is it?
Oh, it's fairly comprehensive and covers things that you would imagine, including natural disasters. Yeah.
There are any number of federal agencies that try to monitor the possibility of these sorts of attacks or actions. To your knowledge, did any federal agency have any indication whatsoever that an effort was underway to stage this kind of thing? Or was this whole thing a complete surprise to the federal government?
To my knowledge, at this time, there was nothing that suggested that this incident was going to occur, but as you can well imagine, we are very carefully scrubbing every available piece of information, digging as deeply as we can to see if there's anything that might provide a helpful lead.
Has the President talked to the governor or anyone personally?
The Chief of Staff has placed a call to the governor. The President plans to make some calls this afternoon to members of Congress and to others just to bring them up to date on what the federal government's response has been to date, and he will continue to keep apprised himself of anything developing. Yeah, way in the back.
Has there been any speculation on the correlation of the 2-year anniversary of Waco, Texas, and this bombing?
There's not been anything substantive that suggests that connection, but there has been speculation, most of it coming from a variety of news organizations reporting on that coincidence at this point.
You know who the President plans to call?
I don't know for sure, Britt. I think he's going to be in touch with members of the delegation and others. Okay. We'll check in with you.
Do you have any sense of what time the President might come out here?
I would not prior to the 5 o'clock hour.
Not prior to 5 o'clock.
The later in the day we do it, the more information hopefully we'll have available. Okay.
A reminder to all of us how vulnerable open societies are. When various officials are asked on occasions like this,
special regional information. Your local 36-hour forecast from the National Weather Service. Change Outlook. The regional forecast. The extended forecast. Local radar showing any precipitation and its movement during the past 90 minutes. Intensity is indicated by the color code at the top of the screen.
Hello, I'm Mark Howard for Action News. Here now, the latest in the bombing in Oklahoma City. It was 10 o'clock this morning, our time, that's 9 their time, when what officials are now calling a car bomb exploded outside Oklahoma City's federal building. Now, the blast ripped off much of the front of the building, and unfortunately, it centered on an area right near a daycare center in the building for the children of federal workers. And the official death toll is now 19. 17 of the victims are young children. Oklahoma City police have broadcast the description of 2 suspects. They have been described as Middle Eastern men in their 20s, last seen driving from the scene in a pickup truck. At this hour, rescuers are continuing their search for survivors, but they say it may be many days before they find everybody still inside that building. They do expect the death toll to rise, and as a result of this bombing, all federal buildings across the country have been put on alert, and some have had bomb threats, including one in this area. That was the case in Wilmington, Delaware. Let's take a picture now of what's going on down in Wilmington, or what was going on a while ago. The area, as you can see, was cordoned off. The building was completely evacuated this afternoon because there was a telephone bomb threat. This was typical of many threats across the country. The good news is none of these bomb threats have been founded. Dog-sniffing animals went through the building, sniffing dogs, bomb-sniffing dogs went through the building. They found nothing, and now workers are back inside in Wilmington. That was also the situation in the federal building in Center City, Philadelphia, where security measures were heightened. No bomb scares there. Nothing out of the ordinary happened. Life is normal in the federal buildings around this area, federal buildings in Harrisburg, Camden, Trenton, and again Center City, Philadelphia. There was, however, a bomb threat against the federal building in Wilmington, Delaware, and that again has ended with no event, no bomb. It was simply a telephone bomb scare. Again, the numbers in Oklahoma City: 19 people are dead, 17 of them children who were in a daycare center in that federal building at the time of the bomb blast, and officials do fear the number will rise. Coming up in just an hour at 5, Action News will, of course, have the very latest live from Oklahoma City, as well as reaction and precautions being taken here in the Delaware Valley. For now, I'm Mark Howard for Action News. Estimated that about 1,000 pounds of explosives went off this morning, 10 o'clock our time, 9 o'clock their time, outside the federal building in Oklahoma City. And this was the scene throughout the day: fire, smoke, burning. 19 people officially dead, 17 of them children in a daycare center that was right inside the building near where the car bomb went off this morning. We are taking a look now. Let's go to Wilmington. There was a bomb scare phoned in at the federal building in Wilmington, uneventful. President Clinton set to speak at about 5 o'clock.
We've been listening to a press conference being held by Governor Frank Keating, Oklahoma governor, regarding the efforts by emergency and law enforcement officials to respond to the devastating bombing that occurred a little after 9 a.m. Central Time this morning at the A.P. Murrah building in Oklahoma City, a federal building that housed all sorts of federal agencies, including the Drug Enforcement Administration and various Secret Service, the ATF Department, other agencies. Some 500 were expected to be working regularly in the building. As you just saw, 17 children and 2 adults have been confirmed dead. There was a daycare center located on the 2nd floor of that federal building. But of course, they are expecting the numbers to go much higher. You see pictures now of the building. Some 40% of the building was destroyed. It is reported that this was done by a car bomb. Some 1,000 to 1,200 pounds of explosives reported to have been in this vehicle, according to experts. They think it may have been some sort of fertilizer compound that caused the explosion. Very easy to obtain. Apparently, according to KXAS television out of Dallas, federal officials are looking for suspects at this time. They are reporting that 3 males of Middle Eastern origin are being sought, the 2 passengers with dark hair and beards. The driver has not been described at this time. Apparently, they rented a brown Chevrolet pickup truck from National Car Rental at the Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport. These individuals are being sought by federal officials. There's another problem that's cropping up there in Oklahoma City dealing with the emergency there, and that is the weather. You can see in these pictures that there is a downpour now. They said a storm was moving in. It has arrived. And of course, rescue and emergency officials are very concerned because of the broken glass, the devastation there in the building, that any high winds and of course the bad rain will hamper their ability to work through the building and of course could make it much, much more dangerous. And we have several conferences coming up. Of course, the governor is anticipated to make more remarks in about 45 minutes, a scheduled press conference there at the Civic Center in Oklahoma City. And before that, in about 15 minutes Eastern Time, 5 o'clock, we're anticipating remarks by President Clinton about the events that have occurred there in Oklahoma City. And of course, ABC will stay with this and continue to update you and bring you these press conferences as they occur.
Action News, Delaware Valley's leading news program, with Scott Palmer, Dave Roberts, Lisa Thomas-Laurie, and Mark Howard.
Good evening. Our big story on Action News tonight is a deadly bombing at a federal office building in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma.
We are standing by live for a statement from President Clinton in the White House. That's coming up in any moment now. A federal office building across the country, office buildings across the country, including the one in Wilmington, Delaware, have had bomb threats. Out in Oklahoma City at this hour, rescue workers try to find survivors and pull them out of the rubble. At least 19 people are known dead, 17 of them children. Hundreds have been injured. Federal agents say the blast has all the earmarks of a car bomb. Police have issued an all-points bulletin for 2 suspects. In the meantime, President Clinton has ordered tightened security at federal buildings all across the country. And again, we are waiting for a statement from the president. This is a live picture, and we'll bring it to you as soon as the president arrives.